Hayley was witty, full of fun, charming, not spoiled one little bit, and a very fine actress.
Whenever I think of Hayley Mills, I think tremendous thoughts. She was such a delight.
I met Hayley on the set, and I loved her instantly. I mean, she's just the most wonderful person.
I've still never seen a more genuinely wonderful young girl of that age in a film.
I just stand in awe of this child who could comprehend all these different emotions and pinpoint the humor, too.
And we'll talk about this perfectly calmly and rationally.
Fine.
You can't get married, you ruin everything!
She's extremely talented. She's a great actress and a good person, too.
The movies that I think I'll be remembered for are the first two, Pollyanna.
Hello.
And probably particularly the Parent Trap.
If we switched, sooner or later they'd have to unswitch us.
I'm personally very happy that they happened. It was a wonderful time in my life. A wonderful way to start a career. You know, it was a great beginning and a great launching pad.
Walt had heard about a young girl who had done a picture in England called Tiger Bay, and her name was Hayley Mills, and he saw this picture, and he thought, that's the girl to play Pollyanna.
Pollyanna changed a lot for me. Well, I used to think it was a fluke, but now I think it was probably destiny. The interesting thing is that my strong memories really start at Tiger Bay. Before Tiger Bay, my memories are not very... It was such a big milestone. I mean, of course I can remember some things. I was 12. It would be very worrying if I couldn't. But I was very lucky and prepared, really, to start acting when I did, because with my father, John Mills, being an actor all my life, actors have been in and out of our house.
John Mills, her father, was, such an outstanding actor. And her mother was a, brilliant playwright. I mean, she was certainly used to stage folk because her family was in the thick of the British theatrical tradition.
My sister Juliet, actually, she started acting. Her first movie, she was 6 months old. So we were all kind of, going in that direction, I think. The studios were, our playground, standing around behind the camera, watching him work and talking to the crew, to the electricians, to the carpenters, to the soundmen, They were all familiar people. I loved to write. My mother was a writer. She was always scribbling away in some upper room or in an old gypsy caravan, which she used to write in the garden. But I hadn't really decided what it was I wanted to do. I loved being funny. I went to a ballet school, but I was never given any solo ballerina parts. I kept banging into the scenery, so I was always given the funny parts, which I preferred anyway, the scruffy boy with the dirty face part, the bedraggled fairy on top of the Christmas tree part. My first movie was, in a way, it was a kind of progression of those parts, because I was very much a tomboy, very much into, my pony and climbing trees and fighting with my brother. And, Tiger Bay, the little girl, was exactly like that. The director, J. Lee Thompson, had interviewed and auditioned hundreds of boys, apparently. When we were living on this farm in Sussex, he came to have lunch with us one day and talked to my dad about playing the inspector in the movie. And I was at lunch. I was the right age, you see, and I had short hair, and I really was messing about in the garden. And he said to my dad, "Would you let me do a screen test on her?" My father said, "I thought you were looking for a little boy." And he said, "Well, yes, I was, but it doesn't have to be a boy." I suppose he was desperate by that time. Anyway, I did a test with my dad. So that was that. The reviews were... I was appalled. Well, not so much that they were just good about me. That was all right. But they said ridiculous things, like, "Oh, watch out, John Mills," or, John Mills' daughter acts him off the screen. Really ridiculous. ridiculous things, and that appalled me. So I hid the papers. I stuffed them under the sofa. Of course, the truth is that he was absolutely thrilled and has always been my biggest support and encourager to all of us.
I guess John explained what acting was to her. Daddy explained it, and she did it.
But after it had opened and, you know, all the shouting and the tumult died down, nothing happened as far as I was concerned, and I just went back to school and forgot all about this acting business. And then we got a call from Walt Disney saying he'd like to meet me. And he was staying at the Dorchester Hotel, and this bit I remember vividly, going along to the Harlequin suite with my mother and my brother Jonathan, and I think my dad too, to meet Walt Disney. We'd just been given a small white Pekingese puppy by great friends of my parents, Laurence Olivier and Vivian Lee. And this puppy was a puppy and therefore not house-trained. And as soon as we arrived in the Harlequin suite, she promptly made a puddle on the carpet. So most of the time was spent, you know, with Walt Disney crawling around on the carpet after this Pekingese puppy. Yes, it was a most enchanting puppy. It was about this big. It was a white Pekingese.
Walt was very fond of Hayley Mills, as he should be, because she was a wonderful little actress. And he wasn't very impressed with most actors and actresses, but as a young girl, he thought she had the charm that he wanted in pictures like Pollyanna.
We had a day visiting the studios, being taken around the animation department and the offices, and through all the sound stages. We went everywhere. We were kind of introduced to the studio. And one of the things I noticed at the time was that Walt knew everybody's name. And that is quite unusual for, you know, the boss, the head of a huge studio like that, to know everybody's name. The first time I met David Swift was at Walt Disney's house. I had read the script of Pollyanna by that time. Was really looking forward to it. The opportunity to play a part that was so completely different to anything that I'd ever imagined, to enter a completely different world, to go back into the past, and to become a person that I actually really did like very much. Thought she was very funny, and liked the fact that she was such a very positive influence. All the relationships that she had were stimulating.
I'm not at all pretty.
Oh, but you are. And you don't look sick at all.
Well, that shows you what a stupid little girl you are.
She brought this kind of lovely reality to it, and yet at the same time you sort of knew she knew inside of her that she was having fun.
Well, aren't you going to invite me in?
That's clearly what not just Walt, but everybody who saw her in a movie saw in her.
Imagine, you're 13 years old, and suddenly you're put on a plane, flown to Hollywood, and here's Mr. Disney, and surrounded by all these stars, Jane Wyman and Carl Moore, all these great actors, Adolphe Menjou and Agnes Moorehead, and you're the central figure. Imagine all of this dumped in your lap. It's overwhelming, overpowering for us, but to be 13 years old. Look how she handled this. She listened so intently.
Her brother Jonathan was going to test for Treasure Island, and he came on the set and he sat down with Hayley to get some advice. She said, never look at the camera and mean what you say. She said, if you just remember that, John, you're going to be fine.
You ought to forget about dying and be glad you're living.
Hayley had an innate talent.
Oh, I don't care what you do.
It was so great that I have to quote another director, a fine director, Stanley Donen, who said, hire the best actors and then try to keep out of their way. And that was certainly true with Hayley. She didn't need a lot of coaching. At 13 years old, she inherently understood the adults' problems, and she knew how to separate the chaff from reality.
It must make you awfully glad
Glad?
that you're so very rich.
She took the corn out of Pollyanna. She was just a tremendous talent.
Then I signed a 5-year contract with Disney, and suddenly I had a future that was not just boarding school. And I had a career for a few years anyway. It remained to be seen what I did after that and what I wanted to do after that. I remember my father saying, look, if ever you don't want to do this anymore, you don't have to, you can stop.
After we had finished shooting Pollyanna, Walt said, here's another story, David, see if you like it, for Hayley. And he handed me The Parent Trap, a little short story by a German author.
The Parent Trap was a very different kettle of fish, playing 2 parts and 2 very, well, quite different girls, although they looked very alike. It was another wonderful script, which always makes life easier and more enjoyable. It was a much more challenging part. The technical aspect of it, the fact that I was having to work with split screen and work with a photographic double, and then switch and then play the part that I'd just done and work again with my photographic double. Very, very well played by Susan Henning. There was more preparation involved in The Parent Trap, working on accents and working with a dialogue coach. Varying degrees of success, I think.
Hayley had some diction lessons, and they would use me as the good old California slang girl who said ain't, nah, and yeah, and Hayley with her properness would be, oh, I can't say that. How'd you say that? Susan, what? Huh? And I had fun with that.
I had to teach Hayley to lock her jaw when she talked and to talk real fast and we couldn't understand her. And she caught on right away, and she sounds pretty American in some of those scenes.
Oh yeah. My favorite fruit is chili beans. When you gotta chew gum, because I always chew gum.
Actually, I mean, I think I got away with it because Susan was pretending to be Sharon and Sharon Susan. So if either one of them kind of like, you know, fell by the wayside, you could say, oh, well, it's because Susan can't really speak like Sharon and Sharon is Susan. And then I think everybody started to get a bit confused because I was often confused.
Shan't, aren't. No. Can't, shan't, aren't. Can't, shan't, aren't. Oh, I can't wait till camp is over. Can't wait. Okay, I can't wait.
Of course, it's much easier to assume the accent of people that you're around every day.
Hayley slipped into that double role like it was she'd been waiting all her life to do this, and to comprehend the meaning of a scene and the importance of a scene and when to accent it and when not to, when to slide through it. She knew this instinctively. I don't know how.
I don't consider myself a great actor by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that it's very difficult for actors to explain their processes. You can't, and I think that as soon as you start to try to unravel it or analyze it and explain it, then it all becomes highly questionable, and I don't think you can.
You're old enough to understand that wonderful, delicate mystery that happens sometimes between a man and a woman.
I know what wonderful, delicate mystery Daddy sees in you. And I can't say I blame him there either. You're very nicely put together.
What was wonderful about Hayley is that she was completely a regular kid. She had no terror, no feeling about it one way or another. She wasn't interested in being a star. She just loved doing it and was a great kid.
My day when I was doing those early movies would start, I suppose, about 6. The car would be waiting outside the house, just like everybody else's day when they go filming. The only difference for me is that when I got to the gates of the studio, if I was early, even if it was just, a few minutes early, I had to wait outside the gates because I could only be inside the gates for 8 hours. So I would have to wait, literally. Okay, I can go in now, 5 minutes. And then in and makeup and hair. If I wasn't needed on the set immediately, I'd go into the little red trailer on the lot and do schoolwork with whoever else was in the trailer. Maybe Kevin Corcoran, maybe Annette Funicello, maybe some of the Musketeers. Whatever other children that were working on the lot, they came and went.
When we had our school on the set, our teacher was Jean Seaman, and she taught all the Disney children.
She had her work cut out for her because she had children of all different ages, all at different levels. And then I came along and I was from England and learning all kinds of different things. Also used to writing with a pen and ink. And in these classes, we were only allowed to write in pencil, which I thought was a bit of an insult. That was it, really. When I wasn't on the set filming, then I was back in the schoolroom pretending to be educated. The album that I recorded afterwards, I think we recorded it in a day or two, like 12 songs. You just sang them a couple of times and then recorded it, and that was it. Then you moved on to the next one. Now you take probably, a year. Then the next director I worked with was Robert Stevenson. He directed In Search of the Castaways. And that was such a different movie that, it was very full of special effects and things. I liked him. I liked all the people that I worked with, all the directors that I worked with. Originally, when I signed the contract with Disney, I was going to just do one a year. And then, other things came along that were, too good to turn down. One of them was Whistle Down the Wind, which was a script based on my mother's book of the same title. Life in the other studios was very different. Because none of them had that small family feeling, None of them had Walt Disney. I mean, I never met the heads of the other studios. They were huge. There were so many movies going on and exciting in a different way. But, you're part of the workforce, whereas at Disney, everyone knows what's going on the lot. Disney films today are all kinds of different sorts of movies. Of course, in my day, they were a very specific kind of movie, family entertainment. I don't know if he had a format as such, but he certainly pursued the positive. He was so many things all in one person, and the private man was a sweet man. And I was lucky enough to see that. And he didn't stand back from it as the creator, moving it around like pawns on a chessboard. He was right in there, getting on the rides and walking around and having a ball. When he took myself, my brother Jonathan, and my parents around Disneyland, we stayed there for the whole weekend. He stayed in his little apartment over the fire station, and we stayed at the Disneyland Hotel. I've got a distinct memory of Walt with my brother and I in the teacup ride together, which is a really rather sick-making ride. It's just a big teacup and it just whirls around. It was almost like my dad in a way. And he loved my mum and dad. He really did. Particularly my mum, I think, because she was very funny and used to make him laugh a lot. So, that helped me, of course. He thought she was so great that... I think she probably got me the part of Pollyanna, if the truth be known.
DC's wearing a wristwatch.
There was a quality about Hayley. It's a presence. It's a gift. It's not something you can learn, especially with comedy. And Hayley Mills had it in spades. She had the gift for comedy. She was such a charmer and such a giver. I think anyone that has ever worked with Hayley Mills would agree with it. And so real. She never hit a false note that I can recall.
When I left California after having done That Darn Cat, Walt gave me a wonderful present. After every film, he gave me a gold disc to hang on quite a thick gold bracelet. And each disc was designed specifically to depict something about the movie that I'd just done. So there were these 6 very different discs. So I had them all on this bracelet. And when I finished my contract with Disney, when we did a wrap, and he gave me the biggest disc of all, which was about bigger than a big silver dollar. And it had the titles of all the films on one side, and on the other side it had a little door with a little, well, actually quite a big diamond in the door. and you could open the door, and inside was written my name. Just Hayley. When I left Disney the next 10 years, I wanted to mature and, believe in myself as a young woman.
How about this?
And I did A Trouble with Angels with Rosalind Russell, Pretty Polly for Universal, and a number of movies. I was actually busy trying to get into the theatre, and if I was constantly being taken back to Pollyanna, it was like, am I ever going to get away from that image? Now I'm so evidently, paramountly away from that image as a person. I'm very proud of those early movies, and some of them can be criticized for being sentimental, but an enormous number of them have survived and will survive, I think, forever, as long as we can keep on transferring them to different mediums.
It's a very, very special day, and I'm very, very emotional, actually, to be back here in this way, to receive this award and to be a part of all these wonderful people who have helped to make this amazing company what it is. And it did shape my life and my destiny. I'm constantly surprised and happy that people recognize me. That they recognize me and associate me with those movies, because I'm still remembered for them all these years later. Wherever I go, all over the world, literally people come up and say, "Oh, hello." Those films take me back to my childhood. They remind me of a very happy time in my life. It's great to be associated with happiness for people. That's a real gift that it's given me. It's like meeting an old friend that you've had a nice happy time, a nice holiday with or something.